that here. I can take some great advice from you on before we go on the air. So podcasting, what would be your one or two great pieces of advice for a young emerging podcaster like me?
Promote.
Okay.
Talk to people, come out to shows like this, and keep at it. The schedule is the key.
Yeah. Consistency.
If you miss out on shows, I have a weekly show I do every Tuesday. I'm not doing it this Tuesday because just time's not going to be there. So I'm going to probably lose about 5 to 10% of my audience simply by that. That's just, yeah.
Okay. I had no idea it was really like that.
Yeah, it can be. So if I'm lucky, they stick around.
Right.
But there is a possibility that somebody can just unfriend you that easily. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's Geekazine's special coverage of Blog World New Media Expo, Voices of New Media. And it's brought to you by the folks over at Stitcher, smart radio for your smart mobile device.
7 minutes to make somebody smarter marketing. I think I just messed that up, but you understand the premise. So here we go.
Are we live or is this?
No, it's recording.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's gonna say, wow. All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the 7-Minute SMarketer. Whether you are a small business, a solo entrepreneur, or whether you manage a large marketing department, this is the fastest place to get caught up on tools and techniques to make you a smarter marketer. Today, our guest is Jeffrey Powers with Geekazine. And Jeffrey has been a long-time blogger, long-time podcaster, video. What do you not do in the digital space?
I don't sell you bad stuff.
That's good. Yeah. That's a good start. That's great. So you got the premise. You said you like the premise. This is basically you have 7 minutes to make me a smarter marketer about your topic, or you owe me a beer.
Okay.
And today, Jeffrey's going to talk to us about evergreen content, which I think is a fantastic topic. So Jeffrey, I'm going to set the timer, and 7 minutes. Let's go.
All right. Well, right now, this show right here is evergreen content. The big question is, what's the difference? You have evergreen content and you have expirable content. I do a show where content, once I'm done recording it, it needs to go out to the internet as fast as possible. Every second that I don't put it out, it loses its value. It loses its luster. News is a big podcast field. It's also a big expirable content field. So on the same token, you have what's called evergreen content. It's shows like this. It's shows like what I do at Geekazine. I have a show called The Day in Tech History. 365 days a year, without fail, I do a podcast every single day. Because of that, next year, like for instance today in tech history, Dell started their, in 1984, Dell started. Michael Dell made the first Dell machine. And so in 365 days, it's still valid. Michael Dell still made it in 1984. So this is all content that I can take and I can reuse. I've put together scripts and I've turned around and I've made those scripts available so I can reuse them again. So I re-record podcasts, or if somebody wants it, they can just listen to it anytime during the year. That's the power of evergreen content. So my suggestion to anybody that's doing any type of marketing is, especially if you're in the expirable content realm, to turn around and make something that's evergreen. The more evergreen content you have on your site, the more that they have a reference to. I have several shows that are on the top of my lists on my stats every single day simply because of the fact that they're evergreen content. And people go to those and then they say, oh, he does a show on tech history. I'm going to listen to that show. Oh, he does a regular weekly show. I'm going to listen to that show. I'm going to watch that show and go from there. So it's a great tool even if you're not a evergreen producer. Create something.
Tell me another example of content that's not evergreen. I mean, you mentioned one example, or some others you can think of that you see people doing and you're going, don't do that. That's just not going to last. It's so transient. And
the only other thing I could think of is something that you think would actually become evergreen, but in all reality is not. Like for instance, an iPhone. If you could do a review of the iPhone 4S, but in 12 months, at least it'll have a window of 12 months. But after that 12 months, the next iPhone version of that phone comes out. And so your 4S review, not as much as important as the new one. So you got to watch the trends, because you can even have evergreen content become expirable content just like that.
I'm a big fan of the 5x5 podcast series with Dan Benjamin, and I know they do a lot of tech review, but they do really consistent tech review with some well-known bloggers and commentators. That could be evergreen in the sense that that's a constantly changing environment, and they're right there in the middle of it. And it may not so much evergreen, but it is very consistent and topical. You could do the same thing, I guess, with your brand. You've just got to stay on top of that as well. Okay.
Exactly. If you stay on top of it, sometimes even the expirable stuff becomes evergreen. And retouches. I'll give you a case. There was one podcast I did 3 years ago, and I talked about a news item. It was about Yahoo. And now Yahoo's coming back in the news about the sales. And all of a sudden, all those little podcasts that I did become re-listened to, which a lot of people are going to. And it's great because they're exploring, they're finding my sites, they're finding other sites that way. So the content is just, it's the key. And having something that people can get back to is just, it's amazing. So
quick question about podcasting. Since you've been doing this for so long, it seems as though podcasting is growing and has been growing. Is that the basic premise in the past couple of years?
Anybody that has a microphone and a computer can turn around and create a podcast. So as much as we see the market grow, we've also seen the attrition happen pass by really fast. There's one thing that people say: if you don't make it past your 7th episode, or you don't make it past your 20th episode, then chances are that's when you end up pod fading. But if you get past that 20 mark, the only way that it would actually turn around where you would pod fade being quit podcasting, is to have something happen in your life that would change. I had a couple shows. I was doing a lot of stuff, and I decided I have to cancel one of the shows simply because of the fact I just didn't have the time to do all the shows. So I pod faded on that, but in all reality, I didn't pod fade as a whole. So for those of the, it's just like with a blogger platform or something like that. If they don't keep at it, then they disappear.
Right. Well, man, Jeffrey, thank you so much. You definitely made us a smarter marketer, and I appreciate you jumping in and doing this real quick. Okay. But that evergreen content's fantastic advice.
All right. So do I get a beer then, or what?
You're like only the second person that's ever asked me that. So I got to figure out a different strategy or something. For one thing, everybody does keep making us smarter marketers, so I'm getting no beer out of the deal. This is like the worst idea I think I've ever had. So I got to refigure this thing.
I think it's a great idea. You're going to try and stump somebody someday.
Yeah, Jeffrey, thanks so much for your time, man.
Well, thank you very much. Take care.